I'm Eric Matisik, President and CEO of Highwing and co-founder of Denver Startup Week. This year's Denver Startup Week has never been more important. It takes a community to rebuild a community, and this week is about showcasing and highlighting the entrepreneurs and small business leaders leading through resilience and showing us a path forward. The best of Denver is in front of us, and may this week inspire you to be part of its story. Before we dive in, we want to say a special thank you to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero. And our track sponsors who made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline and event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to Wix, Kinzon, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Without you, it's not possible.
Welcome everyone to Denver Startup Week. You are attending an event in the Maker Track, which focuses on all things physical products. My name is Lauren Kluk. I run marketing and communications at Colorado Lending Source. I'm also a former Maker Track's chair, and I'm incredibly passionate about helping small business owners and entrepreneurs. Over the last 5 years, Colorado Lending Source has been a sponsor for the Maker Track, and we just love this organization because it really aligns with our mission, which is to foster the economic growth of diverse small businesses within our communities. Celebrating our 30 years of lending, we've helped over 4,000 businesses, creating over 30,000 jobs, injecting nearly $4.9 billion into the economy. Our loans range from $5,000 up to $5.5 million for a variety of business purposes. We're also a Kiva lender, which are crowd-funded loans up to $15,000 with 0% interest rates. When the pandemic hit, our team immediately shifted focus and created emergency loan funds for underserved businesses. We also facilitated over 700 Paycheck Protection Program loans and fielded thousands of requests regarding emergency funding for small businesses. All this said, we are an organization that truly cares about our borrowers and our small business community. If you'd like to learn more about our programs or what we do, please visit us on our website or feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks so much for having me. Hopefully we can meet in person one day, and enjoy your session.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Denver Startup Week. I am Michael Ostro. I'm the Maker Track chair, and I'm a member of the Denver Startup Week organizing committee. This is the first ever completely virtual Denver Startup Week, which is absolutely huge. So thank you for tuning in from behind your computer. If this is your first session you're tuning into, welcome. If you're coming back from another session, welcome back. If there's one thing that 2020 taught us, it's coming together as a community. I mean, maybe you learned some other stuff from it personally. I know I've learned a lot of stuff from 2020 personally, but as the Denver Startup Week team, we've really learned that coming together as a community is of utmost importance. And one of the biggest things that we're actually striving for is to make a safe space to learn, grow, and connect, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, and any combination of those identities. So make sure to check out other Maker Track sessions. You can look for the wrenched icon when you're looking for other Maker Track sessions, or just any other session that interests you. Feel free to scroll through the schedule and just read the sections to find out what interests you the most. So thanks again for tuning in. And now let me hand it over to the session organizer.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this session on manufacturing a technology project. We are so excited to kick things off and get started. My name is Leah, and I work in marketing for a company called Arrow Electronics. For those of you who may not know, Arrow is a multi-billion-dollar global technology company with locations and offices all over the world. And we are actually headquartered right here in Colorado, just down south of Denver in Centennial. The past few years, Aero has really started to focus its attention toward providing resources and technology support to hardware entrepreneurs and the startup community. You know, we as an organization recognize that the innovation coming through the space is really unparalleled. And as a company, Aero provides resources and programs to support the startup space via different programs that I'll get into a little later on. But from engineering services to help sourcing components, to help with manufacturing, all really to help you create, make, and manage your technology. We're so excited to have a presence at Denver Startup Week once again this year, to especially hear from and support local entrepreneurs like all of you right in our own backyard. So for this session specifically, we're so lucky to have two industry experts join us to help explain some of the ins and outs of manufacturing a tech product. As the speakers are presenting, feel free to post any questions that you might have in the Zoom Q&A section, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'm excited to pass things along to Taylor and Lydia now so that they can introduce themselves and jump into their presentation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Leah. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Johnson. I work for Aero Electronics as our rapid prototype and on-demand manufacturing lead. So I help anywhere from startups to large companies make their first prototypes all the way to their low volume production and support them there until they're ready for full run rate production. I've been with Aero for about 4 years now. I spent my first 3 as an industrial engineer at a production facility we had in Phoenix, Arizona. And then I've been with our prototyping group for a little over a year and a half now, and looking forward to kind of a great session, and hopefully we can help you guys with information. And Lydia is going to introduce herself next.
Thank you, Taylor. My name is Lydia Arriaga. I'm sales manager at Advanced Assembly. We're a small to medium volume manufacturer right here in Aurora, near the airport. We have been in business now for 15 years, and I have spent 25 years in the industry, helping customers from startups to OEMs to medical, DoD, and aerospace all take their designs into prototype and then pre-production.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lydia. So kind of a quick high level of what we're going to cover today. We're going to kind of go through a product's life cycle, what that looks like, obviously very high level and very broad. And then what a contract manufacturer is and what they do. And then kind of get into knowing when you're ready to select that contract manufacturer, some common criteria to consider, and then some common obstacles that we've seen and how to kind of navigate those. And then we'll finish off with a little bit of information about the Aero certification program and a quick Q&A at the end. But like Leah said, if there is any questions that come up throughout, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll either answer them during or we'll get to them towards the end. So here we have a product's life cycle, and I'm going to start at that create phase. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this. We kind of go into that ideation, or what I call back of the napkin, right? You have this great idea. You don't necessarily know how to make it happen, but there's an idea and you want to know where to go next. And that's when you kind of get into that design to figure out the how, right? Figure out how to make that end result, go through iteration after iteration of design. And then you need to get into, okay, now does this design work, right? That's when we get into that new product introduction or prototyping. This is the area that I really live in. So this is where you're actually, whether it's off the shelf proof of concepts or you're getting, low volume or, a handful of items or of boards or whatever kind of product you're developing, right? To test out, make sure they work before you're committing to larger volumes, and really ironing out any issues that come up. And I think it's really crucial to spend a good amount of time here and not rush through this phase, as well as design, right? I think that we really want to get to I want to make it and I want to get it out on the market, and it's all great. But I think that you can run into a lot of issues later on in this process if you don't spend the appropriate time in prototyping, making sure that everything looks right before you really go in and start buying product, setting up contracts and things like that, right? So the next we go into that make, that's when your design's fully fledged out, you've gotten your working prototypes, you're ready to go. So we're going to get into that integration. We're going to look at the production and fulfillment, as well as the routes to market. I really only live in that integration and production area. Routes to market aren't necessarily my specialty, but I do know how crucial they are to make sure that you have a product that people want to buy, so that way you continue making it, right? And then there's the last phase, manage, which I feel doesn't really get talked about a lot. And it's because it's so far away from where a lot of people are at when they're just designing a product. And that's maintaining that product through its life, right? So it's looking at the management and maintenance of the BOM. It's looking at any product life extensions you can do. Are there things going end of life? Are there ways that you can, increase that product life, as well as what's going to be next, right? What next iteration do you have, or next gen do you have, and how does that look? Is that a small variation? Is it drastic? Using a lot of customer feedback and what you've learned from the first cycle, and then you're right back at create again, right where you started. However, this time maybe it's not back of the napkin. You at least have a product you can start from and get going on to the next iteration of that. So I just kind of wanted to level set with kind of what this process is. We'll be touching on bits and pieces of this process today, but just making sure that kind of going through it and showing at least what I think a product life cycle looks like at 10,000 feet, just looking in, right? So I'm going to hand it off to Lydia to kind of go over what a CM is. Since she works for a contract manufacturer, I don't know that I could do it justice.
All right. So a contract manufacturer is an organization that engages in sourcing, product assembly, order fulfillment, product distribution, and aftermarket services. And I know that was a lot of information, but you really want to trust an expert in this portion of your build cycle. Contract manufacturer is constant, dedicated, and skilled workforce, meaning if you are a startup and everybody at your company wears 3 hats, when you go to a contract manufacturer, you have people that are skilled with assembly. They're going to produce quality work every time you order from them, allowing your team to do what they do best, which is design new products, build your products, and focus on what your company does. Contract manufacturers invest huge amounts of capital into equipment, usually state-of-the-art equipment, where if most OEMs have an assembly portion, they don't have the same type of machines that a true contract manufacturer would have. And that's how a contract manufacturer is able to do all things assembly, all things electronics. Repeatable, reliable quality, meaning if you order once a month, once a year, once every 6 months, your product is going to be the same every time it ships to you. The parts are going to be placed the same way. You're going to have the quality of the assembly. You should be able to plug it in if you've done your testing and be able to put it in your product and ship it out the door. Contract manufacturers hold the standards in which your product require for resale or just use in the field. So Underwriter Laboratory, ISO, J standards, for aerospace and medical, higher grade, automotive grade, AS 9100. Most contract manufacturers also have turnkey options where this is how our relationship with Aero has grown. We take into account buying all the electronic components for you, having them ready for when you're ready to build, making sure that we manage your supply chain. Also, the flexibility to grow from prototype into large volume production at your scale, meaning that you don't always have to order a large quantity. That prototyping stage is very important. It's where the bugs are worked out and where you streamline manufacturing and where you cut costs moving into production.
So now that we kind of know what a CM or contract manufacturer is, how do you know when you're ready to select one? So first of all, I want to preface this, there's no one size fits all approach when selecting a CM. It's going to be very dependent on your needs, your product, where you're located, budget, all of those things come into account. So there's no one way to do this right or wrong. But some of the top things that I think are important to look at is your design. Is your design close to being complete? And when I say close to being complete, you think it's complete, and maybe there's a part or two that end up getting switched for an alternate. However, you have all of the design fledged out. This now means if you're, maybe you're going into prototyping, so that means your design is complete to the best of your knowledge at that time, right? And then you go in, you build your prototype, and then now you maybe have some design changes and you go through that next iteration. So it doesn't need to be this is the product we're going to build for the next 10 years. But that the design that you have that you're asking that manufacturer to start quoting and looking at is complete, and you're not going to be making a bunch of changes. That adds a lot of time and confusion to a process, and can really slow a lot of things down and cause a lot of confusion. Now, there is one caveat to this. Some contract manufacturers do offer design work as well. So maybe you are engaging that CM to help with that design. Now, if that's the case, obviously your design should not be complete when you start that process, but it really just depends, again, on what you are looking for. Next is financials. And this is obviously, I'm sure all entrepreneurs and startups know this all too well, right? But do you have funding? And if not, when do you expect it? And this tends to be a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation, because a lot of times maybe you don't know what funding you need until you have pricing of what things are going to cost you. Just be very upfront, in my opinion, with those manufacturers, and let them know that maybe you're looking for budgetary pricing versus trying to look to book right now. That will help them as far as trying to source components as well, if they're trying to find things that are in stock at this moment versus maybe when you're looking to purchase in 6 months, right? So just kind of have it as a thought. You definitely don't need to be fully funded, ready to go to start having a conversation with a CM. However, I think being open and honest and upfront that maybe you're not at that point yet, but you're trying to get there, I think is just a good way to start a relationship. And then lastly is timing. Engaging with the CM partner takes time. You've got time to quote. You've got time to maybe go back and forth on that quote a little bit if there are any changes. You also have time to sign contracts, get accounts set up, potentially get credit set up, things like that. All of those take a good amount of time. And now I'm speaking from Aero experience, where that tends to take a lot of time on our end. When someone's setting up an account with us, getting credit with us, things like that. That's all I really know. But I do know it takes time. So if you're looking for a quick turn prototype, make sure you understand what all goes into that besides just the assembly and quoting. And just make sure that you're accounting for that time in your go-to-market strategy. If you're trying to hit a certain date, know what all needs to happen before you're even able to build. And Lydia, I know you maybe want to discuss a little bit more on like the CM side of this.
Yeah, so all of those things taken into account, Taylor had great points. And what we wanted to just, again, reiterate was you don't always have to have one contract manufacturer. I tell my customers all the time, it's okay to have 2 different CMs that you work with, and you're constantly working with both, because when you're in full-fledged production, you have a large CM that's working on supply chain, that's scheduling out your deliveries, probably has you on a plan to receive so much product per week, per month, per quarter, whatever your plan desires. And then on the back end, you're working with a prototype contract manufacturer like Advanced Assembly, maybe, where we're focusing on getting that new design, that upgraded design, that next generation design to replace the design in production. And it's a constant evolving project. Again, the contract manufacturers usually handle a lot of the materials. You can find a contract manufacturer that can move pretty quickly, having bombs sourced in 24 hours, handing out budgetary pricing, which is very important. Here at Advanced Assembly, we do 1,000 quotes a month, and believe me, we don't book 1,000 orders. So we're really good at handing out pricing. It's hard to move forward for a small company, a startup, a new project without knowing how much it's going to cost. There's a lot of companies out there with that type of flexibility.
Yeah, and I think something else that just sparked Lydia too is that there are maybe some larger CMs that do production that also offer maybe some prototype services, but at least from my experience, it can be hard trying to get quick turn prototyping out of a full run rate CM. Not saying it doesn't exist, but if you are looking for quick turn and trying to get things done quickly and not at a production pace, which is weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, like Lydia had mentioned, of having 2 CMs that you're working, simultaneously, I think is very beneficial.
Yes, and we hear it a lot. We're different in the industry. Our machines, we have 6 different lines. We tear them down and set them up 6 times a day. Where a large contract manufacturer, that may not be a cost-effective approach to business, where they like to possibly set up a machine and run it for a week straight.
And
So
they're not
it's
going to tear
different.
down that machine to run your 10 pieces.
Exactly. And it's okay for them to say that. And it's good for all of you to know that up front, because we never want to see you wait 6 weeks for a prototype build. That could be catastrophic to a new production line. It could mean a competitor beats you to the punch.
Yeah, absolutely. So next we have our common criteria to consider, and I'll let Lydia take the first few. You there, Lydia?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Our service has been spotty around here lately.
No worries.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and let you kick this one off.
Yeah. So just to understand what type of build you're building, find a contract manufacturer that specializes in your build. If you're doing robust through hole, find somebody that can do that type of assembly that has wave solders. If you're doing a lot of cabling, those are different type of CMs. If you are high mix, high technology, you want to find people with state-of-the-art capabilities with different types of SMT lines that are going to be flexible for your builds. Find out what level, just ask your contract manufacturer, do you do one piece? If they hem and haw, maybe that's not their specialty. They'll probably still say yes, but you may not get it quick turn. So ask them, what's your specialty? Check out their websites. Maybe read some testimonials on them. Of course, hearing something from a coworker or somebody else in the industry as a testimonial is spot on. Ask your contract manufacturer, what does quick turn mean to them? Is 6 to 12 weeks fast? Maybe not the best for a prototype. Now, just because people advertise and say they do 1 and 2 day turns, that's pretty fast. Not every design needs that, but it's sure nice to know that you have that in your back pocket if you need it. And do you have any manufacturing experts on your team? Do you need a partner to navigate DFM? So many contract manufacturers run different types of tools. They're not so much checking your design, but they're checking the manufacturability of your design. Are you calling things out that are too close? After they run it on the machines, is an individual technician going to be spending hours and hours and hours hand touching up parts? Are there changes that we can recommend to you for future designs where you can space things out or pull things together and hopefully make the design more automated to have less people actually touching it? So a DFM is really important. Having a DFM done on the design, having a DFM done on the printed circuit board fab before you go into fabrication, and then a secondary one, of course, at the assembly stages to make sure that hardware is going to be built most efficiently.
Yeah, and a key thing that Lydia mentioned was it's checking the design for manufacturing. It is not checking your design. So if you're expecting a CM to proofread your design, they do not have the context to know what's all going into it. It can look just like something they're running for something else, for another customer that has completely different functions, and it's going into something completely different. So make sure that you have, you're either asking for services that are for that specific design review, or you have someone on your team that's able to do that, or you're able to freelance that out. But yeah, I've had a couple customers come and think that the manufacturer is going to catch the error they made because a component should have been flipped 180, and that's just not the case. But they are going to make sure that, like Lydia said, that you're not stacking things or putting things too close together and things like that from a manufacturing standpoint. The next thing is, where are they located? Especially when you're looking at prototypes and quick turns and low volume, having someone in your backyard or at least close enough in a similar time zone that speaks the same language as you is very important. I think a lot of times we think that we need to run overseas to do manufacturing, and that's just not the case. We've got a bunch of great manufacturers here in the US, if that's where you're located. And it's really beneficial to have someone in your backyard and down the street from you. So I think that's also something good to look at. Doesn't mean they have to be, but I think especially when you're working with your brand new prototype, it's your first run, your second run. I mean, this is your baby, right? So being able to, when we are allowed to travel, at least be able to hop on a quick flight at the very minimum and get to them, I think is key, as well as not having to deal with a time zone change or a huge time zone difference and a language barrier to try to understand when you're trying just to prototype and get through those first stages. Once you're in run rate production, it might make sense for you. And that's kind of leads us into the next one of, do they have multiple locations, right? So some contract manufacturers, a lot of larger run rate contract manufacturers will have maybe a local footprint here in the US, where they'll do their MPI, they'll do short runs, they'll do what they consider quick turn. And I love how you phrase that, Lydia, of what do they consider quick turn? Because I ask the same thing to my customers of what is fast to you? Because everyone has different definitions. And then can they transfer that product when it becomes a large run rate build overseas to maybe a lower cost geography to save you a little bit there? So these are just some things that's definitely not required, but can kind of be a nice bonus for your run rate manufacturer. And then Lydia touched on this a little bit on what a CM is, but what certification requirements do you have? And what does the CM offer? So you don't want to try to fit into the wrong CM and force yourself in somewhere. There's going to be a CM that has those, that's going to fit your needs. So they're going to have the certifications that you need. They're going to already do work under those certifications. You don't want someone going out and getting a certification just for you. First of all, they're probably not going to do that, one, but if they do, that means they haven't done work under that certification before, right? So I think it's crucial to make sure that you're trying to fit in somewhere that already is set up for the most part, that already kind of fits you, versus trying to go in somewhere because you really want to work with this one company, but nothing is fitting right. It's great that you want to work with somebody, but make sure that it's going to be set up for success for you. And then what's the CM's capacity and how quickly can they turn product if needed? So how booked are they, right? Are they always running at full capacity? Do they have some leeway that they can squeeze some stuff in ahead of time or, kind of jump the line? Again, how quick can they turn something if you need it? Obviously, no one wants to pay expedite fees. No one wants to pay those high costs for doing quick turns a lot of times, but it's really nice to know that you can do it, because when push comes to shove, at least once in your manufacturing experience, you're going to have to do it. And if it's just once, I'm very jealous of you. So making sure that they can accommodate that, and that it's even a possibility. Just again, knowing that they can do that again. And if, like Lydia said, is that quick? Does that mean 6 weeks, right? Or does that mean 2 weeks? What does that mean to them? So next, I'm going to go over to my favorite triangle that I beat to death. So if you've ever been in a webinar with me before, I'm sorry, you've heard this probably before, but it's my favorite thing. So you have 3 points of this triangle, right? You've got speed, cost, and quality. Now, the key to this in manufacturing is you can only pick 2 of these things. And my caveat is I always pick quality. So that means you really can only pick speed or cost. And this is a good way of understanding when you're trying to get budgetary pricing, you're trying to, kind of communicate with that contract manufacturer. And if you don't have target pricing yet, you don't really know what to expect, you can let them know, hey, cost is more important to me right now. The fact that, trying to keep costs low, if that means things go slower, that's what I need. Or I need this as quick as you can give it to me. I don't care about the cost, or I'm somewhere in the middle, I think is a fair statement as well. So this just helps the contract manufacturer know how to quote something, to know if they're really trying to go and find, components that maybe are longer lead times, but they're able to get them cheaper, or, run a lot longer assembly turn time and fab turn time, versus trying to go get everything and source everything as quick as possible. So I'll stop on my triangle, but I got to throw it into every presentation I do. So next we have our common obstacles, and I'm going to turn it over to Lydia for the competency fit.
Yeah, so your product type. And again, this is just what you need now. So we understand that all new products have a estimated usage over its lifespan, whether its lifespan is short or long lived, it all depends on supply chain. But when you're looking for a new contract manufacturer, you're looking to have hardware built, be honest about what you need right now. Don't get yourself caught up in a large production run type build or quote. With different types of pricing in mind, where you would want to pay production pricing for your prototypes, because unfortunately it's just a little bit different. Most contract manufacturers, when you go to them with what your build is, they'll give you very, very fast competitive lead times and pricing. Most contract manufacturers on the back end too can still give you production or pre-production budgetary pricing. It's just contingent on the final design, but at least it gives you a place to start. We all know that the first couple of builds, your parts may change, your supply chain may change. You may opt to do something completely different by the time you go into production. So we never want you to overcommit at the prototype stages until you've had a couple of revisions, alpha and beta through. And then again, just back to that volume requirements, it's great to have the total build scope in mind, but start with just a few pieces. Find flexible manufacturers that will give you competitive pricing, competitive lead times on small quantities. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll even give you first articles or 1Z, 2Z prototypes to test out before you're even in beta runs. And those are the type of contract manufacturers that have you kind of as number one. We don't want anybody to be stuck with hardware that doesn't work, that are coasters or go onto a shelf somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. We want to make sure that they all get into working products and no one's stuck with any extra inventory or things like that. So that kind of brings us into cost. Understanding what kind of component buying power that a CM has, especially if they're going out and sourcing, full turnkey for you. This can help lower costs if they do have a good component buying power. What does that look like? I kind of just asked the question of maybe how many of their customers do they do full turnkey services for? Is this kind of, again, is it a core competency of theirs to go out and buy components as well? Or is their core competency just to do the assembly and to have everything consigned? There's no wrong answer to that, but that will let you know, if you're asking them to do something that's maybe outside their comfort zone, because sometimes they don't want to go buy components. They don't want to do any of that. It really depends on how their business model is set up. So understanding what you need versus what they normally do. That way, if it's something that's, totally in the opposite direction, you maybe know that maybe it's not a good fit. And then Lydia touched on this a little bit, but understanding the difference between prototyping, low volume or pre-production, and run rate production pricing. You are not going to be able to get your run rate pricing for your prototypes or lower volume. It just doesn't happen. And if you have a CM that does it, please let me know, because I've never seen it happen before. So especially as a startup, you're coming in, you're creating a brand new relationship. You can say that you're going to, build, hey, I'm going to have 10,000 units next year. That just hasn't been proven out yet. And even for, customers that have proven that out and have ordered that level of stuff, you're still not going to get, 10 units at 10,000 piece pricing. It's just not the way it works. The components itself are going to be more expensive because you're only buying a handful, as well as the assembly. You're setting up a line to run 10 units or 5 units or whatever that is. So just understanding what you're asking for. And again, asking if you want that run rate pricing or you want that production pricing budgetarily, you can absolutely ask for that too. But understand that when you compare the two together, it's going to be a little shocking. So make sure that you're kind of setting your expectations for what prototype's going to look like versus what your production pricing is going to look like. And then for speed, I'll pass that back off to Lydia.
Yeah. So again, it's just knowledge around what your contract manufacturer can do. And this one gets a little bit tricky only because contract manufacturers are also going to be at the mercy of supply chain. So finding a contract manufacturer that can turn an assembly in 24 hours for you is wonderful. But if you have components that take 6 weeks to get brokered in, there's going to be an issue. So again, with speed, your standard kind of non-premium lead times around a prototype are anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. You can expedite that with premium into 1 to 2 days. You could even stretch it out to 4 weeks. And what you want is just a CM that offers you flexibility. Is it just the 1 or 2 pieces that you need super fast and the rest you can wait for? Find somebody who's flexible to your needs. Are you looking for somebody who's going to allow you to make changes in between builds that might be important to you? Ask the question. I always tell customers when they are up against deadlines and prototyping that while you're in your design phases, if you notice components that are starting to be hot ticket items, the lead times are starting to go long, or just a few years ago, we watched capacitors fly off the face of the earth, buy them up front and consign them to your CM. A CM that allows you to consign 2 or 3 BOM lines means that they're flexible and that they care mostly about your delivery. So all these questions are great to ask of your hardware people upfront when you're getting ready to go into a build. Let them know, hey, my drop dead date is this. I've got to have working hardware, and then pad it by a few days just in case. And your contract manufacturer will back into a turn time with you, and they'll give you options for a couple of different scenarios. And sometimes, their less expensive options may work out perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really just about having that conversation and really laying out what you need. I think a lot of times when we kind of go in and we're looking at bidding or quoting, people tend to be a little secretive and trying to keep things close to your chest. Obviously, find someone you can trust, sign NDAs, all of that good stuff. But just, be really upfront with what you need and lay out, what those needs are and see what their, potential, solutions are to meet that. And again, like Lydia said, a good contract manufacturer is going to do whatever it takes to be able to meet those deadlines, within reason, right? But that's their goal too, is making sure that you're happy and that you're getting the products that you need, because they want to build your next prototypes and your next, they want that to be a relationship. They don't want to just build you one product and then say see you later. So next, I think something that, I've obviously all talking about for the past 7 months, right? But COVID-19, I think, has opened, our eyes to a lot of maybe potential issues and kind of what happens when a CM shuts down or anything like that. So really understanding if they had that essential business distinction and what considerations they had around scheduling. I know that, Lydia was pretty fortunate in that they didn't really shut down. I was able to actually put a lot of stuff through advanced assembly from CMs that had shut down. So, I think that understanding what that looked like for them, for that CM, can definitely be a competitive advantage right now. Obviously, none of us want to go through this again ever, but let alone anytime soon. But just understanding how they handled it, if they had to go on 50% capacity or split shifts, and then what their contingency plan looks like, right? And kind of instead of it being this arbitrary question that you're asking, now you can say, how did you handle this? Versus what would you do in this situation? So I just think it's a good thing to maybe, again, have that conversation around, to understand, if we were in this situation again, would your product be stuck somewhere, or would you be able to get product out still? Again, given that the supply chain isn't all a mess, which is what I think the issues we are mainly running into. But if you do have, product already ready to be built, is it going to be stuck somewhere? Are you going to be able to still get your product out? And then I think we're going to pass it back off to Leah, who's going to talk a little bit about the ARA certification program.
Great. Thank you so much, Taylor and Lydia. As a final note, before we jump into questions, I did want to quickly plug the ARA certification program, which is designed to support tech entrepreneurs from ideation all the way through production. The program is free to join, and there's no obligation to buy from ARA whatsoever. You also remain the sole owner of your IP. For those of you who might be interested in crowdfunding specifically, we have an exclusive partnership with Indiegogo to help get started on that path, though there is no requirement to launch a crowdfunding campaign. As you can see, though, Indiegogo campaigns that are in the program are on average raising 84% more funds and are 4.5 times more likely to reach their crowdfunding goals compared to other Indiegogo campaigns not in the program. Overall, there are different benefits offered through the program, ranging from savings on Arrow.com, marketing services, and then also recently we started offering a new one-on-one manufacturing consultation to qualified participants. That session will be conducted with experts at Arrow like Taylor, and will cover questions that you may have regarding things like lead time requirements, questions about scaling, and more, all related to your specific product. So if you find that you do want to get in touch with Taylor, or if you need a connection to a local CM expert like Lydia, my recommendation would be to join the Arrow certification program via that link on screen, and then request to get connected that way. Moving on now, let's go ahead and jump right into the Q&A. There were a few questions that we had collected earlier, so I'll start off by asking those, and then we can go ahead and jump into any other questions that you all might have. Feel free to enter those again, either through the chat or via the Q&A section directly. But the first question, Taylor and Lydia, that came through are, what are some of the mistakes that designers make that drive up costs?
So I guess I will take that one. So I guess it would be adding features that are top of the line in printed circuit board fab, such as exotic materials, maybe when they're not needed, blind or buried vias, or extra small features that don't actually need to be there. Sometimes you can't get around it depending on what type of components you're using, but sometimes you can. So I noticed that that drives up fab cost, which can be just as expensive as assembly. And then on the assembly side, it's generally the choice of components that drive up the BOM cost. Again, you can't always get around it. But another one is using more different components on the board than required, having more BOM lines than you really need, which just takes up feeder space, again, adds to supply chain. And then lastly is going to be anything that has to be manually done. So hand soldering of through-hole components, wire, cables, anything that's manual will drive up the cost. So the more automation, the lower the cost. But again, that's all specific on your design.
Great, thank you, Lydia. Another question that we had collected was, what are the most common reasons that a design would go on hold?
Do you want me to take that one too, Taylor? So believe it or not, most jobs go on hold because they're missing data. So some piece of data somewhere has been left out of the data package. Another reason that causes jobs to go on hold is our customers don't always tell us the polarity of the components. And with some components, you have 4 different options for a pin 1, and we're really bad guessers over here. So those will be the things that cause your job to go on hold. And we usually see that sort of information on the Rev A's and the Rev B's, because we are constantly flowing that back to our customers through DFM and DFA. And when you get the feedback, we hope that it's important to you guys and that you start updating your own documentation for the next revision. So.
Thank you. Next question is for the both of you. What exactly is design for assembly?
So I would assume that a design for assembly, it again is taking into automation as much that can be done on a machine rather than done by hand. And also, again, design for assembly is going to be consolidating BOM lines using less physical, different valued components on every design. There are some things that we do as well, which automate, which is fixturing, stenciling, panelizing, building more than one at a time for larger volume that will help reduce actual manufacturing time. So there's a lot of things that go into that, and I encourage everybody when they're going into production, ask those questions. How can I make this cost less? And it's not always jumping to offshore manufacturing or ordering more than what you need. There are some cost savers that people will just hand out to you. Send them your data, say what's driving up my cost, and most people will give you kind of a laundry list back of things that are bringing the price up. And again, it's up to you if you want to make a change or if it's critical to the design.
Great, thank you. I think, Lydia, this next question is for you as well. The question is, can I tour your shop? And I'm wondering if you could maybe talk about the availability for entrepreneurs overall to visit local CMs and to actually see the space before they decide to sign a contract or work with them directly.
So here at Advanced Assembly, we encourage people to come see us. We love it. Again, we're a smaller company. We started here in Denver. We have never left our building in Aurora. We've grown over the years. I will be honest with you, since COVID has hit, we have had to keep our building on quarantine. It's what we do to keep our employees safe and their families. We're hoping that we will allow visitors again in 2021.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And I've seen their shop. I can attest it's pretty cool. So when you are allowed to go visit again, I definitely recommend it. I've been to a handful of CMs now, and the level of equipment and their process, especially for quick turn and what they're able to do, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you both. The last question that came through is maybe if the both of you wouldn't mind just talking about maybe advice for tech startups that are starting out. Just, I guess, to everybody in the audience, what is your final thoughts, final advice for people building a tech product?
I'll go ahead and start. So I think my biggest advice is making sure that you partner, and I guess I'll lean more toward the manufacturing side because that's really the only side I know of that whole world. I know there's much more that goes into making a product than the actual physical making of it. But make sure you're partnering yourself with someone that has your best interest in mind too, and that wants your product to be a success. And so someone that's interested in your product and really wants to make sure that it's set up properly moving forward and that really takes into account what you need, I think is really crucial. But I also think that not going to the first CM, obviously if you hit the home run and you find the CM your first swing, great, definitely don't, not trust your gut there, but don't feel like you have to give someone the work because they've quoted it for you, right? Make sure that it's a good fit for you and make sure that it's what's going to work best for you overall. And all I recommend is if someone's not going to work out for you, give them that feedback because I know that's helpful to them as well.
Agreed. And always working with manufacturers. Just because maybe your competition uses somebody doesn't mean that you have to use them. Most CMs can build any type of product as long as they're qualified to do so. And I would find one that you enjoy working with, that you build a good relationship with, that helps you through rough times and is ready and willing and waiting when times are good. It's a personal choice, and you want to do business with people that you like and people that give you good quality and hit the standards of work that you're expecting. And that could be quality, delivery, price, a number of different things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great. Well, it looks like those are the questions that we have. Taylor and Lydia, thank you so much again for your time today. And thank you everyone who joined and participated in this manufacturing panel. We hope you have a great rest of the day and get to join more sessions at Denver Startup Week this year. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.